The Boston Celtics made an absolute perfect trade. A few days back during the NBA trade deadline, the Celtics traded away Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, and a top 4 protected 2022 first round pick to San Antonio for Derrick White. And I know it's only been a few games for Derrick White, but so far he's looking like an absolute perfect fit for this team. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, please consider hitting that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetic.
At the beginning of the season, the Boston Celtics were just straight up not a good team. They struggled both offensively and defensively, and obviously if you're struggling at both sides of the court, you're just not a good team overall. And for the most part in the beginning of the year, the Celtics were around the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference and were certainly disappointing based on the expectations they had going into the season. But as of late, the Celtics have done a fantastic job to really turn things around. And in the last 10 games, they actually have a 9-1 record and are also on an 8-game winning streak. And compared to where they were at the beginning of the season at the 10th seed for the most part, now currently the Celtics hold the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference, and if the Celtics could continue the level of play that they're playing at now, you would expect them to be an even higher seed than they are now as the season progresses. And to help the team, the front office went into the NBA trade deadline looking to make some deals to help this team overall. And the Celtics went into the trade deadline and made a few different moves, but the main move that I want to talk about is Derrick White. But before we can look at how Derrick White fits in with the Celtics as a team, let's look over his game point by point to really see what he does well out there individually. So starting with his 3-point shooting ability, Derrick certainly has the ability to hit that catch and shoot 3-point jump shot, also has the ability to cross over into a 3-point jump shot, sidestep, step back, and basically from that 3-point range, he has all the abilities that you would ever need. Although he isn't necessarily shooting at a very high percentage from that 3-point range, this season he's only shooting 32% from deep, he certainly has all the abilities you would ever need from there. But now talking about his mid-range shooting ability, he certainly has a pretty good mid-range jump shot, I would say. Of course, he has all the abilities similar to his 3-point jump shot, where he has the ability to catch and shoot from that mid-range area, has a pretty nice pull-up mid-range jump shot within his game as well, crossover, sidestep, step back, also has a nice floater within his game, which I mentioned in a lot of my videos, but as a point guard or a shooting guard, whatever you would want to call him, it's very important to have that floater within your game, especially when running the pick and roll or pick and pop, because there's a lot of open opportunities there, and Derrick certainly has the ability to do so. But now talking about his ability to drive all the way to the basket, this in my opinion is Derrick's best ability. Of course he is pretty athletic out there, and we've seen that from time to time with some crazy posterizing dunks, but besides even getting posterizing dunks and just dunking in general once driving to the basket, Derrick also has a pretty nice layup package within his game as well, and does a pretty nice job at finishing around the basket with crafty layups. In terms of Derrick's passing and playmaking ability, he certainly has an okay ability, I would say at this point. He isn't necessarily a traditional point guard, he's kind of that combo guard, but he certainly has the ability to run the pick and roll or pick and pop, find open teammates either cutting all the way to the basket or in the corner for a wide open 3-point shot, and overall I would say he's a serviceable point guard if you want to run him at that position. But for the Celtics, most of the time the ball is probably going to be either in Jayson Tatum's or Jaylen Brown's hands for the most part, so the Celtics don't necessarily need to worry about that all that much, but of course it's nice to have a guy like Derrick White that has the ability to handle the ball and run the pick and roll or pick and pop. But besides his offensive abilities, what really separates Derrick White to me personally is the fact that he's such a great defender. He does a fantastic job at playing great individual defense, but he also does a very good job at playing team defense as well. He gets in the passing lanes, gets a ton of steals, also has fantastic hands defensively to knock the ball out of whatever player he's guarding, or even as a secondary defender, just does a great job overall defensively. And in my opinion, I just think Derrick White is a very solid player out there. Of course, he isn't necessarily going to be one of the stars of your team, but he's just a very nice player either coming off the bench or in the starting lineup to have on your roster. But now let's talk about how Derrick White actually fits with the Celtics roster and how he's fit in so seamlessly early on. The main benefit that Derrick White brings to the Celtics, at least in my opinion, is his defensive ability. Just adding another perimeter defender that's fantastic defensively to this roster that already has a ton of those guys just makes his team so much better in my opinion. When you look at some potential lineups the Celtics could throw out there, you talk about about Derrick White at the point guard or shooting guard and Marcus Smart at the other position. Then you talk about Jaylen Brown at the 3, Jayson Tatum at the 4, who's been a much better defender as of late, and at the 5 you would have Robert Williams. Literally everybody in that lineup is a really good defender, and anybody who's going up against that lineup would certainly have a very difficult time scoring on that. And of course, besides their great defense, they would also have a ton of offense when you talk about Jayson Tatum and all the things he could do offensively. Jaylen Brown has been fantastic offensively, especially over the past few seasons. Marcus Smart, certainly a decent player offensively, I would say. Robert Williams is always there for the pick and lob situations. And of course, now Derrick White to space the floor out a little bit, but also get all the way to the basket. I just think that would be such a great lineup for the Celtics to throw out there, either in the starting lineup, but more importantly, to actually end the game. And for the short time that Derrick White has been on the Celtics, we have seen that lineup a bunch of times, and we've seen a ton of success with that lineup. So certainly early on, it is looking like Derrick White is a very good fit for them. Of course, it is very early. It's only been a couple games, but in my opinion, I think Derrick White's game specifically is going to work very well with the Celtics roster, and especially with the star players in Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But now let's move on to the Celtics team as a whole. So as I mentioned before in the video, they did disappoint early on and really did a fantastic job at turning things around. But what are my expectations for the Celtics going into the end of the year? So I certainly think the Celtics will make the playoffs, a top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. I think based upon the way they're playing now and all the confidence they've generated, and especially by adding some new players, especially Derrick White, I think the Celtics team should at the very least be a top 6 seed, but honestly, I could see them being even better. Maybe a top 5 seed. A top 4 seed would be a little difficult for me to see. But of course, besides the seeding, the real thing that matters is the actual playoffs. But let's say for the sake of the video, the Celtics are the 6th seed by the end of the season. If everything were to hold up, they would be playing the Cavaliers, which honestly I think is the best matchup out of any other team in the top 6 in the Eastern Conference for the Celtics. I think the Cavaliers are a very good roster, but at the same time, they are very young and inexperienced, and most of those players have never been to a playoffs. So I think in that sense, and the top end talent that the Celtics have, they would actually have a pretty decent chance to win that series. But if they were to play any other team in the Eastern Conference, I think it would be a very difficult matchup for them. Of course, with the top end talent that the Celtics have, they have the capability to beat anyone, but I just think it would be a very difficult matchup for them. Any other team in the top 6 in the Eastern Conference besides the Cavaliers. I think the Cavaliers are not an easy team to beat by any means. I think they're a fantastic team, and they've certainly impressed and surprised a ton of people, including myself. I just think due to the inexperience that they have, the Celtics would have the best chance to beat them out of all the other teams in the top 6. But we'll see what happens going forward for not only Derrick White, but also the Celtics. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Derrick White fits in with the Celtics perfectly, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these 2 videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics. Hope you can't go where I'm headed.